Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that the right book at the right time can change lives, and that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do here on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature: picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels for readers of all ages. In each episode, we'll talk with children's literature authors and discuss their books, their hopes, their dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. Whether you're an adult reading to their inner child or connecting the young readers in your life with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. So grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit Loving host, inviting you back to another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Maryrose Wood. Maryrose is the author of the acclaimed series, The Incorrigible Children of Ashton Place, a series that has captivated middle grade readers and has been on multiple best of lists. She's also the author of Alice's Farm, A Rabbit's Tale, and she's here today to talk about her newest release, BADGER, a love story. It's an illustrated chapter book about a badger wondering if he really is a badger and seeking friendship too. It's already received not one, but 3 starred reviews, and it certainly has this reader's heart too. It's a beautiful book with so much inside, and I'm so excited to talk with her about it today. So let's get to it. Maryrose, welcome, welcome, welcome to KidLit Love. I'm so glad you're here.
Hey, Stephanie, I am so delighted to be here. We love KidLit Love. Those are just the 2 best words in the world, KidLit and love.
I agree.
Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh, of course. I can't wait to talk to you about this beautiful book, as I mentioned in the opening. But before we get there, I would love to talk about you. Could you give us the introduction, the backstory? Tell us about you and your books and your journey through children's literature.
Oh, I would be delighted to. It's a long and twisted journey. I I love writing books for kids, but I am not one of those people that, at the age of 6 knew that I was going to be a novelist and write books for kids. I'm always amazed, when I talk to kids, which I'm lucky enough to do in this line of work. And even elementary school age kids are really passionate, like, oh, I'm going to be a writer when I grew up. Like, I didn't know that. So my hat is off to the young would-be writers out there. My first love when I was young was music and theater. And I am not from a background of like an artist family or even an urban family. I grew up in the suburbs. I grew up on Long Island. I went to public school, and we were just lucky enough to have a band program and a chorus program and later on a drama club. And I was just a sponge for all of these creative pursuits. And particularly when I fell in love with the theater, which was when I was in my teens, that was very life-changing to me. And I ended up going to school as an acting major. I went to New York University after I graduated high school and studied acting. And then, and anyone who's followed my career at all has heard this story. I'm not going to belabor it, but I got the opportunity to drop out of college because I was cast in a Broadway musical when I was 18 years old. It was ridiculous. And so I had this very abrupt, fantastic, like beyond my wildest dreams opportunity to launch my career in the creative fields as a very young person and quite unprepared in the musical theater. And just, as a little footnote, the project was a musical written by the person who was my idol, who was Stephen Sondheim, no longer with us, but, just the great American musical theater composer, lyricist, whose work I knew by heart by this time. So I launched into this career like with such a sense of like fatedness. I was singing your songs in my bedroom, 2 years ago, and now I'm working with you. And it taught me so much. And I spent my 20s in the theater. And one of the things that it taught me, of course, was that storytelling is not a disembodied practice. And later on in my 40s, I pivoted from the dramatic arts, from theater. I had done some directing. I was throughout my 30s focused on writing after studying improv for a while, and I was writing screenplays and I was writing musicals and plays. So there was this evolution from the like dramatic types of storytelling toward fiction. And in my 40s is when I really embraced writing fiction, and I had the opportunity to start, publishing right away, writing first young adult novels and then quickly discovering that I really wanted to write middle grade. But all of that like play in the field of storytelling really trained me, that words on a page are not it. Like, that's not what the reader comes for. If the reader comes to us for words on a page, we could just hand them a grocery list, or a dictionary. And the art of telling a story was paramount to me, right? Because you can't get away with it. You can't fake it when you're on stage, right?
Right.
And this is all very clear to me in hindsight, as many things about life are, but I was in love with storytelling from the beginning. And what I can see now is that, and I was also an avid reader, don't get me wrong, absolutely an avid reader all through my whole life. But what I see now is that I love the storytelling so much that I had to be inside it. I had to become the character and put on the costume and really play around in it quite with immediacy,
Mm.
not as an intellectual practice, not as an exercise, but as a lived experience. And I still feel that way about storytelling. And these are virtues that I strive for in my writing, to try to create a lived experience with characters who don't feel like words on a page, but characters who feel like friends or someone that a reader can relate to, whether it's a human or whether it's a rabbit or whether it's a badger.
Right. I'm so glad you mentioned that right at the top because one of the things I couldn't wait to talk to you about and share with you is how I felt as I was reading the book. I know I can't wait to talk to you about the story and give listeners the sneak peek into what it is about. But there was something about reading your book that quieted my body and quieted my mind and my heart in a way that doesn't happen very often to this overstressed, go, 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 can't wait to get to the next thing person. And I remember just reading the book and then stopping to kind of like come out of whatever trance I was in the story and thinking, oh my gosh, is this what calm presence feels like? And your book and this badger and golly just did it. And
Wow.
it really did become this experience I felt in my body as well as my heart. And I couldn't quite figure out why. Like I didn't know if it was the beautiful slowness of the story and the simplicity of what was mattering in the story. But now hearing you talk, right, it was that and you. And exactly what you did on the page, which is just put such a presence in there. I'm so glad you just put that right up at the top of the episode because I thought, how am I going to explain what this did for me
Oh,
completely, outside of the book? And you just rolled that one right in. So thank you.
oh, good. I'm glad I could tee that up for you, Stephanie. This is
Yeah.
totally unplanned. That's such a lovely response. It is so special for any author, especially with a new book, right? Bad Badger came out quite recently, to start to sort of sit in wonder and observe
Right.
what happens to it now. It's off. It's its own little ambassador, right? It's out in the world. And I don't have control. I don't have remote control over the reader's experience. Everything that I had to put into the book is in the book. And now it's up to you and up to the other readers of all ages to basically let it come to life in their own imaginations.
Mhm.
And magic can happen. And, it's very interesting. I do coach writers as part of my days these days. I think it's nice when you've had the good fortune to be able to spend a career writing and sorting out how to create this experience for readers. I think it's important to try to, stick a hand out and mentor people who want to do the same. And this is the trick, isn't it? Is to come up with this story for which in many ways has got a lot of personal stuff in it for me. It was a lot of feelings for me as well. I had to really kind of go through this, figure out what I want to say, and then apply all of the technique and all of the craft and all of the teeny tiny fine nuanced control of, let's face it, language, right? Like that's what it's made of, but in such a way that when it gets into your hands, you open the book up and you don't see the words. You see Septimus, you see Gully, you see their struggle to become friends. You feel the journey as if it's something that you're going through yourself, right? It's very magical.
It
This is why
is.
books are so great.
It is. It is magical, and all books are magical, but your book was especially magical for that purpose. And I want listeners to know that because I love a lot of books, but there is something magical about what happens when you get in to this story. So let's go to the story. Let's tell listeners a little bit of what it's about. Give us the inspiration behind why Bad Badger, and then a little teaser of what they might expect in the story.
Sure. So it's funny. I've been thinking for a while, not just during the creation of this book, but to some extent during the creation of my previous middle grade books, about the theme of connection
Mhm.
and how challenging it is for people to get along with each other, for people to understand each other, to people to be able to really see each other and to be open to our differences. And I feel like there was some of that theme particularly explored in my previous book, Alice's Farm, A Rabbit's Tale, which kind of positions the world of rabbits and the world of farmers, which are, these sort of traditional enemies.
Right.
Any Beatrix Potter fans out there know what I'm talking about. But if you've ever had a garden that had little critters come in the night and eat all your vegetables, it's right. And so I was really exploring, like, well, what would it be like if there was a need for them to collaborate, if there was a need for them to work together, so different. So that's part of the premise of that book. And when I started to work on Bad Badger, I just wanted to take a more intimate approach to it. And the book is short and the language is compressed. And the storytelling really centers on these two characters. One of them is Septimus, who is a badger. He's an unusual badger. And this quality of being unusual is both external and internal.
Mhm.
There's something about the outside of Septimus that doesn't look like your typical badger. Badgers have these marvelously handsome faces with the two distinctive stripes that go down each side. But Septimus doesn't have stripes, he has spots. And I have to shout out to the illustrator, Giulia Gagini, who does such an incredible job envisioning and depicting exactly what that looks like. That we've got this badger who's clearly a badger, but he's just got spots instead of stripes on his head. The other things that are unusual about Septimus is that he's not, what's a badger? It's a mammal. It lives in the forest and fields. It lives in an underground burrow, does all this stuff. Septimus is really a badger, kind of out of KidLit. There have been so many great badgers in children's literature. I think of The Wind in the Willows as one, like a great example. But there are others in older KidLit and even contemporary KidLit. There are new books that feature badger characters that I'm sure a lot of middle grade readers out there already love. And I don't know why, but badgers have this kind of lineage as being really fun characters to write about. And uh, and he's a tea drinking, living in a cottage. I need to relax, so let me put on my favorite opera type of badger.
Yes.
That's what he
Yes.
is. But unlike the animals in Wind in the Willows, say, he worries about it because he knows that's not what badgers are like, right? And so he's got this kind of anxiety that yes, I'm sort of a badger, I guess, but I'm not like what a badger's supposed to be. I don't really look like perfectly I'm the way I'm supposed to look. And I have these qualities that are not very badger like. And so this is just like a little, spinning top of worry inside him that has become part of his personality. The way I think, if I can speak for all of humanity, or at least I'll speak for us, the way I think most of us have a couple of things,
Yes.
maybe, right? That
Yeah.
we carry through our lives, that our little secret doubt, right, about ourselves and about where we fit in and whether we're meeting expectations, whether we're good enough.
Yes.
So that's really what Septimus is about as a character. And of course he's very nice and he's very charming about it, but we get this sense of this like depth of concern. But his life is not bad. He goes to the market, he listens to his opera, he's got this seashell collection that he's very proud of. It just doesn't seem like there's a lot of companionship.
Mhm.
And this can happen, right? When you don't feel great about yourself. It's not so easy to be close to others because they're going to see you. They're going to see the hot mess you are inside. And some people, you know, get around that by keeping a careful distance. And that's what we mean, that's what we mean with Septimus. However, you know, I believe and practice that every great story is a journey of transformation. And this transformation that Septimus needs, I think, is clear from how I've just described his character. And that transformation flies in the window one day and in the form of a seagull. And that seagull only says caw. So unlike Septimus, who chats away merrily, like a character in a children's book, the bird just talks like a bird.
Yep.
She says caw. And so part of the challenge here is that there is this longing. One feels it that the birds arrived in the window. Septimus is excited to have company, and this friendship begins. But it begins tentatively and with some difficulty and with not really an easy shared language, although Septimus feels that if he listens hard enough he's going to get it, and he really does start to understand Gully, or thinks he does. When he asks Gully what Gully's name is, I'm using Gully's name, he's the one that comes up with that, because when he says, well, what's your name, and Bird says caw, it's like, okay, then I guess we'll just call you Gully. So the struggle to connect is really what goes on between the two of them, and I did have a lot of fun with that. And I had a lot of fun. I mean, you asked sort of where the inspiration for the book comes from. While I was thinking about how to develop the story about the difficulty and the rewards of connection, um, I thought about contrast between the characters, right? A badger is like a very earthbound creature, kind of in nature would be living underground. And to me, a seagull is like the ultimate emblem of freedom, soars through the sky, dives in the waves, swims in the water. I mean, what's more free than that? And so this kind of like constraining anxiety that Septimus has is his earthbound quality, and Gully is just this, soaring creature. And they have to work really hard to understand each other because they are so different. They're so different. So that's the story. It's really the story of their friendship. And, you started the conversation by noting, like kind of foregrounding this idea that he's sort of worried about whether he's really truly a badger or not. And one of the things that happens in the story, without me giving too much away, is that Septimus gets to the point where he realizes intuitively that if he's going to get in a place where he can really be a good friend and have a good friend, he's got to be a good friend to himself first. And he goes on a special little journey in order to make that happen. And it's one of my favorite scenes in the book, because I think this is something that we all get to, right? It's a moment in life that we get to. How can he be a good friend to himself, accept himself, understand himself, so that he could be a good friend to someone else and accept them and understand them and have compassion for them? So,
That moment you're talking about, that scene, that collection of pages, that is just it's like a mic drop moment in the book for readers because you're on this journey with Septimus and you're on this journey with Gully too as the connections between them are happening and you literally can feel in your body what Badger is feeling and going through, and when he comes to those realizations, it's like you get that realization and it is so powerful. And there's one line on your website, well actually in the description of the book, that I think you just paraphrased but went straight to my heart, and it was this: to be a true friend while staying true to yourself means knowing who you are to begin with. Oh, and doesn't the world need this book right now?
oh, I appreciate that, Stephanie, very much. And I know that you have this great vision, as part of your work, bringing good books to readers, of reminding adults that reading children's literature is a very worthy pastime for them as well, that these books are, when done right, are really meant to speak to multiple generations.
Yes.
And I really do appreciate that you said that. I had the experience when the book came out of going to New York and for the launch and visiting some schools and really seeing what it was like to read the book aloud to kids and to have discussions with them afterwards. And what really moved me, and this was kind of confirmed with my talks afterward with the librarians and teachers, was that even pretty young kids are absolutely struggling, a lot of them, with how to be a friend, how to be part of a social group, how to negotiate the perils of friendship, and having social anxiety, to be a second or third grader and to be already self-conscious about how one is being perceived.
Yeah.
It's hard to say it because we want to imagine the young children as being in this like blissful zone, but anybody who really works and knows with young children or raises kids knows that it's not so.
Mm.
And I found a lot of, I was very moved actually, and found a lot of satisfaction in the way this story about, hey, guys, well, what do you think? Do you think it would be hard or easy for a badger and a seagull to be friends? Like, what do you think about the way Septimus and Gully have to work through their friendship, right? It just takes a little effort,
Yeah.
and they make mistakes, and they hurt each other's feelings sometimes, and they have to apologize, and like all the
Yeah.
stuff of relating. Oh, these were fantastic conversations. I mean, it was just so great to see how the kids connected to those themes.
Yeah.
But as you observe, do we ever outgrow these themes? We do not.
We do not. We do not. And
No,
I
we
I
do
have to
not.
say, as someone who loves reading, who loves writing, who loves learning, who loves growing, like I am your personal development book fan. Like I love all of those things. And as adults, I read a lot of them, listen to a lot of podcasts about, how to like yourself, how to find your purpose, how to find your passion, how to have friends as an adult. None of them really land like a good story that you can connect to will land. And so as an adult reading this, like Bad Badger is this beautiful story, but it's a life coach for adults, I think too. At least it was for me because I got into that zone and I really just thought, okay, if Badger can do this, I can think of this, right? If Badger can think about his actions and what they mean to him, how they might be construed by someone else, what he thought the message might be, what the message might be, without overthinking it, as Badger sometimes likes to do, as well as myself. It was it was just seeing that transformation in Badger that was just so, it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful in a way that kids are going to be able to relate to tangibly, like, can seagulls drink out of a teacup? Or, do badgers like getting wet and sandy? To all of those wonderful story-like things that point to this bigger meaning that they will get out of it, yes, but adults certainly will too.
I absolutely love this idea of Septimus the Badger as life coach, an inadvertent life coach. That's so brilliant. That's a great one. That's going to make me smile for a long time, Stephanie. I love it.
Good, good. I am glad. I also want to mention the illustrations. I know you already mentioned the illustrator and the beautiful way that Badger is brought to life on the page. But there are multiple full page, beautiful images that certainly contribute to the story and the emotion and the meaning. And I want to give you a chance to talk about how you think that adds to it. And of course, give a shout out to the illustrator of the book as well.
Well, Julia is, I mean, what can I say? I'm so grateful that my editor, Tracy Keevan at Union Square Kids, found Julia. I'm sure with the help of her staff, her design staff in the offices. But Julia, first of all, worked for the illustrations for this book. They're all done by hand. There's no computer art here, and there's nothing wrong with using, contemporary tools to create art. In the hands of an artist, it's still art, no matter what tools you use. But for this particular book, because it's so authentic, and it's sort of like not really clear in what time it's set. It's in the eternal land of middle grade storytelling, right? It's in this somewhat unspecified, timeless world of story. It was so beautiful to see illustrations that you just can see the pencil moving on the paper. You can just see the handcrafted quality of this artwork. And I love it. And I go to bookstores all the time, and I see, like, Bad Badger on the shelf with other books, and I think, wow, this really looks special, because we are not seeing a lot of art like this at the moment, right? It's really, really beautiful.
It is.
There are many illustrations throughout the book that capture these sort of key moments in the characters' emotions, and I really appreciated that quality in the artwork as well. Even if it seems like, oh, this is just sort of a simple depiction of Septimus gazing over the sea at the horizon holding a teacup, you will open the illustration and you're like, oh my gosh, you know exactly what he's feeling. And it matches the tone of the story, and it matches the sort of texture of the characters so perfectly that it's mind-boggling, like, to me, that we could have found someone who had the gift to do that. They're really, really very beautiful illustrations, and
They really
contribute so
are.
much to the
Yeah.
book.
And as you mentioned, I think the medium matches perfectly the book and the emotion in it. I don't want to pick a favorite, but I do want to tell you, or at least show you, because listeners can't see, but the the part near the end of the book, which I won't talk much about so I don't spoil it, but it's where Badger is looking, Septimus is looking for Gully, and the emotion as he's just standing there hoping desperately to find his friend. I don't know how she did it, but in just pencil, we have that emotion on Badger. They really are just so spectacular.
Yeah,
Beautiful coloring.
an amazing job. And purely coincidentally, she lives in Italy, and people assume somehow, because I'm, living in Italy at the moment, and also because Septimus the Badger actually is very fond of Italian things. He loves Puccini
Yes.
operas, and he really likes a nice loaf of focaccia bread. He's always making pasta. He has a fondness for Italian culture, which is very sweet. People assume that had something to do with the fact that we choose Julie, but no, it was just her work, and I have not met her in person yet, but we've exchanged, mutual appreciation society style emails, and I'm really looking forward to getting the chance to meet her in person at some point.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine that will be a treat. Now, I do want to ask because there's a little hint of more books to come perhaps after Bad Badger. And so I'd love if you could give us a little sneak peek into that.
Oh, I absolutely will. So, this book is the first of a series. I'm actually, even as we have this conversation together, I'm in the midst of revising the second book. And, I've written series before. You mentioned The Incorrigible Children of Ashton Place is a 6-book middle grade series that I wrote. And so I know well the pros and cons of series work. And what I wanted to do for sure with Bad Badger was to make sure that this journey that Septimus and Gully take in book 1, which is Bad Badger, a love story. So that little subtitle sort of sets the tone, that it was complete and that it got them through a really big journey together and that we had a really satisfying ending. And, we could stop there. But as you observe, Stephanie, the ending that they come to has within it, let's say the seeds, we'll just say
Yeah.
the seeds of more challenges, right? And like any connection, like any relationship, lives change. And then new circumstances come in, and then the friendship has to adapt. And that was clear to me when I wrote the book, that the journey that they go on together, from like being strangers to being sort of tentative friends, to each going on a kind of, obviously they both personally as individuals go through a lot during the course of the book, and then finding that they have now gained, like, they deserve each other at the end. They've earned the friendship. They've looked at themselves. They've taken responsibility. They found what's important and what connects them, and they've learned be to celebrate also the ways in which they're very different, the parts of life that they won't ever share, the things that are like, hey, I that's cool about you, that's not me, but it's you, and it's so cool about you. Like, so there's this diagram of like, here's where we overlap and here's where we're different, and we can celebrate how our friendship like nurtures the places that overlap, and then cheer each other on in the places where we're different, right? So you can see that that's kind of like, that's not a static situation, right? That's a dynamic
Mhm.
achievement to strike that kind of balance. And as we know with experience, and as kids find out from experience as well, a friendship is not an inanimate object. It's not a set it and forget it thing. Friendship has to be nurtured. You have to show up for your friend. You have to open up to your friend. You have to know how to give support and how to ask for help. Like, there's a lot of dynamism in the way we relate to each other. And I could see very clearly that the ending of Bad Badger 1 was potentially like an earthquake that was going to, change the rules of their relationship. It's going to change the friendship a lot. And I was excited that I felt, right, the opportunity to continue their story would give me a chance to like press that reset button and say, okay, well, now, moving forward, how do we renegotiate, um, I would say, if I wanted to give you a sneak peek, I would say that Bad Badger, a love story, is really about how to be close to someone else. Like, how do you make a healthy friendship work? Just like in that privacy of the friendship. But book 2 takes that question and opens it up a little bit and asks, okay, but now that you know how to relate on this intimate level, this, one-on-one level, how can you still hold on to yourself while being part of a flock?
Mm.
So
Yeah.
that's where we are. That's where we are in book 2.
Yet
It's really
another book
fun.
to
Really fun
love.
themes to explore, because we're not, this is the way our lives work, right?
Yes.
We have friends, but then we're also part of social groups.
Yeah.
You might be hearing this. There's a big siren going by my street.
Oh,
It's gone now. Okay. I don't know if you could hear it or not, but it was very loud here. So just wanted to wait for a second before I finished answering. Um, so this is how it works, right? We learn how to relate to ourselves. We learn how to relate to somebody else, but then even friendships exist in the context of social groups,
Right.
neighborhoods, communities, like larger, like our sense of who we are and where our connections exist. There's a circle within a circle within a circle, right? And
Yeah.
so I just felt it was really an appropriate next challenge for the two of them to say, okay, well, what's the next bigger circle than this, and how can we hold on to all of our what we've learned, our hard-won wisdom about how to relate while moving into that next bigger circle.
And I will repeat, a book that the world could benefit from right now.
Well, I hope it does benefit from it, Stephanie. And this is why it's so important, to talk about books and let people know what books are out there. And I hope that many people will say, "Hey, that sounds like a book that my family would enjoy." I like to throw in, because I'm still an old theater person, even though there's a lot of like themes and stuff to talk about in this book. It's got a lot of very funny stuff in it as well.
Yes,
I mean, I am
it
an
does.
entertainer at heart, and I think that kids will really enjoy some of the fun stuff,
Yes,
some of the really fun stuff.
you're right. And I would love to mention some of them, but I want readers to find them. I want readers to find those phrases. I want readers to find those moments. And I'm got a big smile because I'm thinking of them right now and thinking, yes, this
I,
is
I feel like I ought to not be so mysterious. I'm just going to throw one specific in, just in case it's the tipping point to get somebody to want to read this book. I have never challenged myself to write characters who were snails before. And I wrote snail characters in this book, and I had a great time doing it.
Yes, that is such a good scene when Septimus like suddenly realizes something about the snails and go, oh my gosh, it was such a fun moment. Yes, that listeners, there are lots of things that could tip over to get you to want to pick up to pick up this book, and that is a fun one. It's well within the parameters of a book they might want to pick up.
Well, within parameters, much as Septimus discovers that he himself, although not a typical badger, is well within parameters.
I
It's a
love
wonderful discovery. As
Oh,
are we
I'm
all,
so
Stephanie. We're all well within parameters.
yes.
All are.
Yes, that is it right
Yep.
there. Oh
So,
my gosh, I've loved talking about this book with you. It's beautiful inside, outside, and what it does to the reader is just wonderful. I want listeners to know where they can find you, where they can find more about this book, about your other books. Where is the best place to find you online, on social media, or all the places?
all of the information about my books and a little bit about me and kind of the latest news about where I'll be and stuff like that will be on my website, which is www.maryrosewood.com. No surprise there. If you want a little bit more day-to-day adventures, Instagram is probably the best place. So that's just maryrose.wood. And I would love it if you follow me on Instagram, especially since I've moved to Italy. There's so many beautiful things to take pictures of that I've started to really enjoy, like capturing the sunset over the Adriatic, or here's my perfect morning cappuccino. And also, some of my adventures as I go around with Bad Badger, helping the world meet Septimus.
And I also want to mention that on your website, and as you mentioned earlier, we have a lot of listeners who are educators, who are librarians, who are parents reading to their kids, but a lot of listeners are people that want to write children's literature too and find this for inspiration. And you do have some resources there and you offer that as well. So I want to make sure I put that out there for listeners too.
Oh, fantastic. I'm absolutely happy to mention that. I have another website that's focused on my work teaching and mentoring writers. And I mean grown-up writers. If you actually want to get in the business of writing fiction that is pro level and, you know, strives for some of the types of qualities that we talked about today, honestly. I call my program Path of the Storyteller, and that's the name of the website. So it's www.pathofthestoryteller. And if you're, serious about improving and you would like, some pretty serious mentorship and some training and, kind of get into this uh, lineage, I would say. Just we talked about there being a lineage of Badger characters in fiction. There's a lineage of storytellers. Storytelling is the most ancient of human practices. And those of us now who are still doing it, we're doing it as part of that lineage. And it's very noble and important work. Because as Stephanie observed earlier, you can reach people's hearts through a story in a way that mere information can never do.
Yes.
And that's really important.
Yes.
So you really can have an impact as a storyteller. So please, if you're a writer, reach out to me at pathofthestoryteller.com. Get on the mailing list there. You can send me a DM on Instagram, and I'd be happy to tell you more about how to work with me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. This was such a wonderful conversation, and I am thrilled to know that there's more.
Yay. Thank you, Stephanie. This has been a great conversation. I had a wonderful time with you.
I did too. And listeners, I hope you had a wonderful time as well. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all of the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes and at alitlife.com. You'll also find KidLit Love on Substack. That's where you'll find posts for each episode, monthly KidLit roundups, and an invitation to join my summer book club and go deeper into the world of children's literature. And if you loved this podcast and want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast, or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of KidLit Love. Thanks for listening.